This is Erin Hops with Rhinebeck School of Music, and in this video, this is part 2 of my Blues Basics series of videos. So we talked about the 1-4-5 chord progression in video number 1, and hopefully that makes sense because now we're just going to build from there. So now that you understand the chord progression that the blues is based on, we're going to talk about different blues forms. So there's a lot of different blues forms. There's the 12-bar blues, there's 16-bar blues, there's 8-bar blues, and most of those are pretty standard chord progressions. They're pretty cliche, and we're going to talk about all of those, but we're going to start with the 12-bar blues chord progression because that is probably the most common and the easiest to start with. So first of all, a bar is a measure. So when we talk about a measure, we mean those lines in between the chords or the notes that you're reading in music. And usually, we'll talk about different time signatures too, but we're going to keep with 4/4 for now because that's common time. That's what most people play music in. But there's also other time signatures for the blues fun, like 6/8, 12/8, things like that. But we're going to keep it really simple. We're just going to talk about the 12-bar blues form, which is really just a 12-measure chord progression with a 1-4-5 that just keeps repeating. And of course, within this form, there's a lot of variation, particularly with intros and turnarounds. And if you get into jazz chord substitutions, it can get pretty complicated, but we're going to keep it very simple. And once you recognize and memorize this form, you'll see how it relates to most rock and roll music, classic rock, a lot of different styles. And this progression will become predictable, it'll become familiar, you'll be able to anticipate it, you'll be able to recognize it and hear it. It'll just be a really good thing to know. So a 12-bar blues in its very basic form goes like this. So you have what's called your 1 chord for 4 measures. You go to your 4 chord for 2 measures, back to your 1 chord for 2 measures, and then you have the last 4 bars, which are called your turnaround. So that is what kind of takes you to a different place and turns you around back to the beginning so you can start all over again. So the turnaround in a blues, in a 12-bar blues, is where most of your chord movement happens. So what you have is your 5 chord to your 4 chord to your 1 chord for 2 measures and then back to the beginning. So if you can memorize this form and you can transpose it to any key, you'll have a really good foundation for blues music. So let's start with talking about a key. So let's take the key of A, for example. So the first thing you want to do is find out what your 1, 4, and your 5 chords are. So if we're in the key of A, your 1 chord is A. We go A, B, C, D is your 4 chord, E is your 5 chord. So I talked about different methods on how to figure that out. You can use your circle of fourths or fifths diagram. You can count on your fingers for this key because it's one of the easier ones that doesn't have a lot of sharps and flats. Or you can do the old-fashioned method of, writing out what a 4th and a 5th are. Or you can think of, this is my A here on the top string. If I go down a string, I have my D. If I go over 2 frets, I have my E, my 1, my 4, my 5 chord. So now let's plug that in to the 12-bar blues chord progression. So you're going to have your A chord for 4 measures, your D chord for 2, back to your A for 2, and then your turnaround is going to be E to D to A. So your 5 to your 4 to your 1, and then it all repeats. So as a rhythm guitar player, if you were playing this, a blues song, your job would just be to keep that form going over and over and over and over while people sing and play and riff and solo over top of that. So there's all kinds of variations you could do within patterns and melodies and chord structure, but we're just going to keep this so basic right now because we're really just learning the foundation of everything. So if you want to play a major blues with a major tonality, you can use all major chords. Most people use dominant 7 chords, which give it a little bit more of a bluesy sound. So either way, you could use A7, D7, E7, or A major, D major, E major. So what we're going to play is kind of like a shuffle feel with this, right? So the best way to explain that is these are going to be 8th notes, but they're going to be kind of swung. So you're going to kind of have this long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short kind of feel with the eighth note. So a straight eighth note is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But if you swing it a little bit into a shuffle, you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So I'm going to play the pattern in A using that basic rhythm. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. A and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 D and 2 and 3 and 4 and D and 2 and 3 and 4 and A and 2 and 3 and 4 and A and 2 and 3 and 4 and E and 2 and 3 and 4 and D and 2 and 3 and 4 and A and 2 and 3 and 4 A and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's all 12 bars. So you notice when you total it all out and you count the measures, it's a 12 measure pattern that just keeps repeating. And so now let's try to play it in a different key. Let's try the key of C. So in the key of C, our 1 chord is C, our 4 chord is F, and our 5 chord is G. We can check that out here. Here's my C, go down, here's F, over 2 frets, there's G. So 1, 4, 5, or C, D, E, F, G. You can use any number of the methods that I've talked about previously. And here we go. Here's a 12-bar blues in C. 1, 2, 3, 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4 and F and 2 and 3 and 4. F and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4. G and 2 and 3 and 4. F and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4. C and 2 and 3 and 4. Try one more key, very common one for the guitar, key of E. So E is our 1, A is our 4, B is our 5. Here's E, A, B. So we're going to have the E chord, the A chord, the B chord. If you don't know how to do a barred B, you can just play a B7. You kind of want to get in the habit of playing all these dominant 7 chords anyway, but I'm trying to keep it simple. Some of my students don't really know dominant 7 chords that well yet, so it's a big jump. But if you do, let's try this one with all dominant 7 chords. We'll do E7, we'll do A7, we'll do B7. 1, 2, 3, 4, E7, 2, 3, and 4, E7, 2, and 3, and 4, E7, 2, and 3, and 4, E7, 2, and 3, and 4, A7, 2, and 3, and 4, A7, and 2, and 3, and 4, E7, 2, and 4, E7, and 2, and 3, E7, 2, and 3, A7, and 2, and 3, E7, and 2, and 3, and 4, E7, and 2, and 3, and 4. So try practicing that in any key. If you know bar chords, that'll be easy, but if you don't, it'll be a little bit harder to play in every key. So I'm going to talk about one common variation to put into this blues, which you'll probably hear and you might have played before. So in the second measure, we're going to add the 4 chord, and in the last measure, we're going to add the 5 chord. So I'll give you one example. So we'll do this in the key of A. So I'm going to go 1 chord, then the next measure, go to the 4 chord, then back to the 1. So that breaks up that 4 measure drone on the same chord. Now we're on the 4 chord, and then back to the 1. Now here's the turnaround with the 5 chord at the end of the turnaround. 5, 4, 1, 5. Sounds just a little little bit more interesting, right? There's a little bit more movement, because sometimes when you're dragging on and droning on that one chord for a while, it gets a little boring. And if you add just that one chord at the end of the turnaround, it doesn't really feel like it wants to go back as strongly as if you put the 5 chord in there. It really makes you want to lead back to the beginning. So you can practice that in the key of C, the key of E, and other keys. So there's countless variations on turnarounds and intros that can be used in the 12-bar blues, but that'll wait for other videos. Just practice playing this progression and with all major chords or all dominant 7 chords for now. We'll talk about what a minor blues is, because there are minor blues where you can use minor chords, but that's kind of a separate idea. People that you want to listen to for the blues: Buddy Guy, Albert King, B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, T-Bone Walker, Eric Clapton, Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson, Sonny Boy Williamson, Chuck Berry, John Lee Hooker, Robert Cray, Jimi Hendrix, Keb Mo, the list goes on and on and on. And you'll notice too how, a lot of artists borrowed heavily from the blues. Like, you'll listen to even rock songs, that are heavily influenced by the blues. So some songs that have the 12-bar blues chord progression would be CC Rider, Hound Dog, Blue Suede Shoes, Crossroads, Before You Accuse Me, Sweet Home Chicago, Malted Milk, Have You Ever Loved a Woman, Pride and Joy, I've Got My Eyes on You. There's like a million. So start listening to the blues. It'll really help you start to memorize and recognize and hear this form. So much of practicing and playing music is listening to music, so I encourage that. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, visit www.rhinebeckschoolofmusic.com and subscribe. Become a patron, www.patreon.com/rhinebeckschoolofmusic. See you at the next one.